Hello everybody and welcome back. It's Asa the Greek, and today we're doing another PEG short theory. Yes, you read the title correctly. We'll be talking about the Chapter 2 victim, and who we can expect in the upcoming chapter. Obviously, we don't have much to work with as of right now, though you saw what I predicted even when we did have info about Chapter 1, so is this really too much? Let's talk about it. With Chapter 1 over, people are wondering who the next victim is going to be. Canon danganronpa games often give hints of who will die next, or who will have some importance to the next chapter during the trial, specifically through the Rebuttal showdowns. While in Danganronpa 2 they didn't really focus on that as much, only hinting at the second victim and the fourth killer, V3 was consistent in giving the next victim or killer a Rebuttal showdown minigame during the trial. This has led many people to believe that the next victim is going to be Winona. That's because in both Danganronpa 2 and V3, the first character to get a rebuttal scene is the next victim. In Danganronpa 2 it was Mahiru, and in V3 it's Ryoma. And in Danganronpa's Garden, the first rebuttal daemon is none other than Winona. Does this mean Winona is the next victim though? No. I don't know why I went so close to the mic. I don't believe Winona will die next, simply because the team has said before that they don't intend on keeping the Danganronpa tropes. But you could get a double kill in Chapter 2, for all we know, and neither of them be Winona. The fact fans know that the first trial rebuttal is the victim makes me think that when we get the Chapter 2 trailer, they'll try to bait us again, making us think that Winona dies. Though she is right next to Damon in the trial, so I'm not sure how that could work. But if Winona isn't the next victim, then who is? Before we answer this, let's take a look at the canon games first. Majority of the deaths in Danganronpa games usually impact another character, either triggering their character development, or a pointless arc if you're a Chapter 3 person. There are of course some cases where characters don't impact the others much, but most of the time someone is affected by their deaths. In Danganronpa 1, Saika's death affects Makoto, Mondo's death triggers Kyotaka's arc, if you can call it that, and finally Sakura's death impacts Asahina. In Danganronpa 2, both Mahiru and Pekko's death impacted others, Pekko leading to Fuyuhiko's eventual redemption arc, while Mahiru triggered what would have been Hyaku's development arc, despite getting cut short. Nekomaru's death affected Akane and Gundam's affected Sonya, and I am still pissed we didn't get updated sprites of her with the hamsters. Such a wasted opportunity. Yep. Finally, Chiaki's death affected Hajime. Lastly, in V3, Kaede's death gave the biggest character development, the main character promotion, to Shuichi. Anji and Tenko's death gave some very needed character development to Himiko, and Gonta's death triggered the quote-unquote breakup between Shuichi and Kaito, with the latter giving character development to both Shuichi and Maki. So, with all that being said, it's clear that the characters that had connections gave arcs to the survivors, but also, most of these students did end up living through it all, with the exception of Taka and Hyoko, once again proving how ass the Chapter 3 syndrome is. But where am I going with this? Almost all Eden Garden's characters have some kind of pair. Damon and Ava, Desmond and Eloise, Wolfgang and Grace, Angry Dead Toshiko, Chet and Mark, Ulysses and Winona, leaving Cassidy, Jean and Diana with no pairs. Kai would fall under the same group, but it does seem like he's getting closer to Damon, so maybe he will take Ava's place in the future. Ultimately, every character here has the potential to receive a character development from the next death. In this chapter, we saw that Wolfgang's death made way for Diana's arc, while Ava's death impacted, well, Diana again, but Damon too. I don't think the team would choose to kill someone that will not really bring anything new in return. In the canon games, there were some deaths that didn't really affect the story much, aside from just dying. Characters like Ryoma or Ibuki, for example. Their deaths felt cheap and just kind of a filler because in some cases they hadn't really done much or there was no point to kill them. I could sit here and say that Cass is the next victim, but sadly, as much as I like her, I don't see her death really impacting the actual story right now. Only if the killer was someone like, I don't know, Ingrid, whose death and betrayal would then progress others' arcs, would Cass dying next make sense. And I think the writers will try to do justice to every single character as much as they can. To go back to our topic though, there are two possible options for the next victim. The first one is to look at those that had rebuttals. Sure, the team won't do the tropes, but the trope is the first rebuttal only, meaning that Ulysses could very well be the second victim. Do I think that though? No! Ulysses has very little presence during the daily life part of the chapter, and he didn't do a lot in the prologue either. Most he has done is help during the trial, which is why I think he didn't make it up to chapter 3, where he died there. Unless he somehow becomes super active during chapter 2, I don't think Ulysses will die next. If any of the Rebuttal people die next, then I think that would be Grace. There are times people just won't change much, and I feel like that's the case with Grace. She was also affected by Wolfgang's death, but she didn't seem to change much aside from just being angry, which is kind of usual for her. Diana is clearly the one that got the development perk from Wolfgang's death. Grace has had a pretty big presence as well, being one of the few surviving prologue peeps. She was around during the big events of this chapter, and she was a quick suspect during the trial. Additionally, her rebuttal is optional, meaning that a lot of players probably missed it. I really like Grace, and I hope I'm wrong, but with Wolfgang gone and her not really connecting with anyone else, she looks like a solo member right now, and they never live long. The second possible option is killing someone that didn't have a rebuttal. Even in the canon games, to my surprise, not every character gets a rebuttal. There are some who are too nice to actually have such an argument. That's going mostly for the V3 cast, because the Danganronpa 2 cast was doing its own thing when it came to rebuttals. Obviously the first victim never gets a rebuttal, but so does the first killer, something they did in PG 2. So no rebuttals for Tugami, Teruteru, Rentaro or Kaede. Shafting the third case syndrome peeps even more. Ibuki, Hyoko and Mikan didn't have a rebuttal either, and neither did Chiaki for obvious reasons. V3 was more on the nose when it came to the rebuttals, yet Kibo, Tsumugi, Himiko and Anji never get rebuttals either, which, for their characters, it does make sense. When looking at the cast, we already know that Dad won't have a rebuttal, and while it's possible for Winona, Grace and Ulysses to have a second one, I assume they try to keep it fresh with new faces. There's 4 characters I could see not having a rebuttal showdown, those being Ingrid, Kai, Eloise and Jean. From these, the one that makes the most sense to die next is none other than Ingrid. While she hasn't had the most screen time yet, her death would definitely kickstart Toshiko's development. So after saying all that, who do I think dies next? Grace or Ingrid? Well, I think Grace is next. Now, normally I would end this here, but some people did ask me in the comments about who I think the second killer is going to be, and my answer to those people is that my opinions have not changed. I do still think that the killer is going to be Ingrid's, just like I said in my new death order prediction. I feel like in Grace's case, we already saw that she didn't really like Toshiko and he treated her like a gremlin, as she says. So it's very possible that after Wolfgang dies, she's like, okay, I have no one here but myself, so there's no point in staying here. So she tries to kill Toshiko, because she is the easiest target, as I've said before. And Ingrid sees this and catches her and saves Toshiko and by killing Grace. And then we could have a trial with Toshiko trying to defend Ingrid, even though Ingrid would probably, try to take the blame regardless. I know it's kind of a broad summary of how this could play out, but again, it's very early for me to say too much about this. I feel like it's a plot point that would make sense and would trigger Toshiko's development arc, but that will be all for today. Do let me know what you think of all this. Do you think Grace will die next, or do you have another person in mind? Until the next video though, do take care and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.